Hello and welcome to Brain Says Strange Things. I'm Patrick, this is my brother Jordan, and this is the podcast where we talk to you about horror movies. It's been a little while since we've put up a new episode. Some behind-the-scenes delays have kept us from posting anything new. But we're back now, and we're hopefully going to be back on a little bit more regular basis. So in this episode, we are going to review the new... Really, I guess we have to say the new box office bomb, because it's not doing too well in the theaters, from Adam Wingard, You're Next. There's a lot of buzz.
Critically successful.
Yeah, very critically successful. A lot of buzz around this movie. So we're going to be reviewing You're Next, and maybe towards the end of the podcast, just kind of go over some horror-related odds and ends, talk about some things that we've been watching in addition to that film. But we'll kick off things with our review of You're Next, which is a fairly simple story. It's firmly in the home invasion subgenre of horror. This film was originally produced a few years ago now, premiered at the Toronto Film Festival to great acclaim, but for various reasons it took quite a while to roll out into theaters, but now it has received a wide release. Basically, a family kind of gathers at the parents' home for a family get-together, family dinner, and they come
Real secluded.
Yeah, secluded house, of course, with no cell phone reception, during the film.
They kind of explain that a little bit.
Yeah, they over-explain it, I think.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so it's essentially a family comes under attack by these mysterious masked figures, these characters in animal masks. And we don't really know what's going on or why they're being attacked at first, but there's a lot of twists and layers to the story that are revealed as the film goes along. The kind of crucial element to it, beyond the basic premise, is that the girlfriend of one of the main characters has had training as a kind of survivalist. So she is very surprisingly competent and confident when it comes to going up against these killers, and herself has something of a killer instinct. So she's kind of an atypical character in that way.
Sort of.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what did we think of this film? You weren't really taken with it.
I did not like it at all.
Yeah. What was your kind of take on this film?
I got bored by it.
Okay.
I understand what it was going for. It's like it's trying to comment on the home invasion It's weird that that's like its own subgenre, but I think it's more of just like a regular slasher movie. I didn't even look at it like a home invasion movie, but I understood what it was trying to say. I just don't think there's a lot to say. I don't think I was kind of feeling like, all right, there's really not much more you can say about slasher movies. I think there's not much more. They've kind of reached a point where they're at the top already. There's not much more to say about it. I didn't get anything out of it. I wasn't like scared by it. I could say like a few nice things about it. The animal masks I thought were creepy whenever they would appear. That's why they put it on the posters, I'm sure, and use it in the trailers. It had a really good like sound design.
Yes.
Like music.
Agreed.
That's pretty much it. There are like plot twists towards the end that are just not interesting at all. I don't know. I was just very underwhelmed by it. I don't understand where all this acclaim is coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a difficult movie for me to review because I don't think I disliked it in the way that you did. I think all the way through it was a very well executed movie. It was kind of held together well from beginning to end. I thought the characters were well drawn and fully drawn and fairly interesting for this kind of a film. I thought it was just fine. I did think it was much more straightforward than what I had been anticipating. A lot of the reviews I read compared it to something like Scream, like something that is kind of knowing about the genre and kind of has that winking at the camera quality, which this did have a little bit. It had a very light kind of comedic.
That's another thing about it is like those points. While they are sort of funny, they're just really few and far between.
Yeah, it was more of a straight. I thought of it and I watched it just as a straight horror film. Yeah. It really wasn't.
I thought of that too because you can look at it that way, and like the funny moments don't pull you out of it necessarily. Like a funny moment could happen in this horrible situation.
Yeah, it was all kind of played at a
so it's hard to
level.
say like
it wasn't a satire.
I read reviews and they're saying like it's a black comedy, and I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah,
not at all.
And I think that those kinds of expectations from those reviews were what kind of made me underwhelmed with it. I was expecting something a little bit more than just a kind of typical home invasion horror film, and there really
is more than that.
Well, in what ways do you think that it was kind of reaching for another level beyond just scares, beyond just exploiting that home invasion fear? Like, in what ways did you see that the filmmakers were kind of reaching for that other level? Because I'm not sure that I saw it as much.
I think a lot of it is with over-explaining it, and you kind of even mentioned it, which I don't really understand where you're going with that, because they explain that girl is like a survivalist.
Yes.
Which is why she's able to defeat she does defeat the...
Yeah, she's able to be a
the home invaders.
Yeah, she doesn't just...
With, like, Home Alone traps.
Yeah,
she's
she's
like
tough. She takes charge of the situation right away. She, becomes something of a killer herself.
But look at any other slasher movie with the final girl. They don't need to explain that.
Right.
There's no need to explain that.
Yeah.
I found that just distracting, and...
Okay.
Was that part a commentary on horror?
Well, I don't know that it was
what was it?
Yeah,
it was a very...
Yeah, I don't know that I saw it as a commentary at all. Because it is the basic kind of final girl mode. I mean, that's all final girls kind of become the ones.
It's almost more rewarding if they just kind of do it on their own, rather than like, well, I was a survivalist and I grew up like that, and
and you've also got...
And that's how I know how to make all these... It's better if they just kind of pull it out of themselves.
It's a better movie. It might not necessarily...
It's a more interesting character.
Yeah, because you can kind of see the progression. Like, the typical final girl progression is you go from, like, complete overwhelmed victim into some kind of a survivor that has to... They gotta
break them down before they can fight back.
So I thought that about this movie too. I would have the same criticism that, it was kind of cool to see a character take charge in the way she did in this movie. It wasn't that interesting. From like a character
That's pretty much
standpoint,
my review of it. What it was saying was not interesting.
But okay. So you thought that though making her that kind of character was an attempt to kind of do something different with it?
Possibly.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't.
Because what I'm trying to get at is when I watched the movie, it seemed like a straightforward horror film. As a straightforward horror film, I thought it was just fine, and I would recommend people see it. Although it wasn't like thrilling, exciting, the greatest movie ever to me. You're saying you think they failed at trying to make this commentary. I'm asking, where did they attempt to make that commentary? Because that's what I'm reading in reviews, and I don't know that I saw it. So where are you seeing that they made this attempt and failed? You know what I'm saying?
I do. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain, because I think a lot of it is just the sense of humor of it.
Okay.
Or lack thereof.
Okay.
Or they didn't quite know how to use humor in this movie.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at Scream, almost every line of dialogue is a joke in some way.
Yeah. I think that
this is played so straight sometimes.
Yeah, it's a horror movie. It's not a horror satire. It's a horror movie.
Yeah, but there are obvious lines where it's like... I mean, you could even tell from the horrible audience that we watched it with. I mean, that people are like having just like laughter, from these weird moments, like when she wants to have sex on the bed next to the dead mother. It's like, and the guy's like, why would you even say something like that? Like, that's kind of a funny line.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think it kind of draws you out of it, doesn't it? A little bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like, moments like that, I feel like there probably should have been either more or not at all. It's like, I felt like anytime they tried to attempt like a joke, I didn't laugh at anything really during it. I thought like lines were funny, but I didn't know like the tone that it was going for.
Yeah, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, sometimes I don't mind.
But by the end, you should know
that mode. Yeah.
You can like confuse an audience in the middle of a movie, and then by the end, they're on board with it. You know, like they've come full circle. This one, I was kind of annoyed from the beginning. I was just, I don't know, I was just like watching a home invasion movie unfold with random jokes inserted into it that weren't funny.
Okay. So let me ask you this. If they had not attempted to do the humor, if they had the main character be more of a typical final girl, and essentially had everything else the same...
It would have been worse.
You would have disliked it more. Why? Just because story-wise there's not enough
It would have been
interesting?
so plain. The only reason I could give this movie points is that it was trying something different.
I see.
Ultimately, it fails, I think, but without any of that stuff...
Then there would have been nothing there for you to hold on.
It would have been nothing. It would have been like a few jumps when the guys in the masks appear, and what else is there? What is the story particularly interesting? The story's horrible, I think.
I don't think it's horrible.
It's like a Scooby-Doo episode.
No, I wouldn't say that. I don't think it was on that level. I think it would have made a good short film. Like, I think they had enough story here for like a solid short film. Maybe not for a great feature. I guess my take on it is...
Is that interesting that the kids want to kill their parents so they can get an inheritance?
I mean, I don't know what you mean by interesting. It's interesting enough as fuel for a horror film. It's not something that I sit down and think about like I want you to like an Ingmar Bergman movie or something. I'm like, oh yes, how fascinating. I think it's enough plot to carry the story. I mean, look, here's my...
No, but I'm like, what is there?
I mean, here's my take on it, though. It was more of a straightforward horror movie, which in a way disappointed me because I was expecting something more.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you watch it just as a straight home invasion film, it's satisfying. It's good. Especially when you look at things like the Paranormal Activity movies or the Texas Chainsaw movies. Story-wise, they might have a lot more going on, but they're not very well put together films. This is a well put together film. I feel like it's the kind of thing that we should be praising, even though this particular story didn't thrill me, didn't excite me. I don't want to slam it because I feel like it was well made.
I'm not criticizing it just for the story. I'm just like, it's like weaker than the sum of its parts. I feel like it's also like it pulls its punches a lot.
Yeah, I feel like it was.
I feel like explaining the girl's... I don't know why I'm caught up on that, but explaining her origin as a survivalist, that just really annoyed me. It was stupid.
So what would you have preferred? She just was like that and they didn't explain it? Or that they just followed the typical final girl route?
I don't know. I just didn't like what they did with it. I don't know. What do you want me to like write my own movie? I don't know what I would have done differently, but
well, I'm just saying
like what happened.
The explanation was stupid to you, or the fact that it was explained?
The fact that they had to explain it. I don't understand why they did it. And then, well, there's one other thing that before I can't explain that any further, but at the end, when she gets shot by the cop.
Spoiler alert.
Well, I have to spoil it, talk about it. I think they should have just ended it, like, right there. Instead of showing that she's okay, yep. She got shot in a place where she's still fine. You know, it's like they kind of had to play it safe a little bit. And then the end gag, I would call it gag.
Yeah, for sure.
Where her final trap kills the cop.
Okay, yes.
Well, that's the end of it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's just a spoiler.
No one's going to go see this.
Okay.
They'll rent it, but even that part of it, I don't think would ruin the movie. If you knew that part of it, would you be any more turned off to it?
No.
I don't like that. The fact that it kind of had to play it safe like that. That it had
to
show that.
I don't know that killing a police officer is necessarily playing it safe.
I mean, it's a little like the ending to like The Strangers, you know, where she wakes up and they have to show that she's still alive.
I didn't really necessarily read it like that. But
it's like you're looking at it like a serious, like home invasion movie, but you can't really point to anything that made made it intense for you, made it like real.
No, I can't. I
like,
don't, and that's why it's a
I
tough.
didn't like the actors really. I don't.
Really?
There's just a lot I didn't.
Yeah, I feel like
Personally, my
there's
personal
something
taste.
about this sensibility of the movie that just bothered you, because I feel like all these criticisms you're pointing out are not in and of themselves bad things. I just think they rubbed you the wrong way for whatever reason.
They did.
Yeah.
I can honestly say that I'm just like watching the movie, and I don't know. The best thing I can say is that I was just like bored by it. I didn't draw anything out of it. I wish I would have been like surprised by something that they did.
But wouldn't you rather like people would go see this movie rather than something like Texas Chainsaw 3D?
Yeah, but that's
Activity?
that's all I'm saying is that like the only reason I would praise it is because it tried to do something different.
Yeah.
Now I don't think it succeeded in what it was trying to do, but at least it tried. Texas Chainsaw is just lazy.
Well, I guess my final word on the movie is just that, like, you know, like I said, like I was disappointed that it didn't kind of bring it to another
Did
level.
it scare you?
No, I didn't think it was particularly scary or you know, interesting. But at the same
you just
time,
like the craft that it was put together. I guess.
And also,
right?
I can't really point to anything I didn't like about it. You know what I mean? There was no, unlike you, for me, there weren't any jarring elements like, oh, I don't like that, or that's stupid, or that was a bad choice. I was kind of with it the whole time, from beginning to end. It's just that I never had that moment of excitement or thrill, you know, that you get from, like, the best movies, you know? But I feel because it was well put together and you know, it tried to be somewhat unique, it did seem kind of like a fresh take in some way.
I did like
I don't want to like slam it. I don't want to tell people not to go to it.
I liked one shot when she's sitting in the kitchen with there's a blender on one
Yeah.
girl's head and there's a knife in the other girl's head,
Yeah.
and she's just sitting there
Yeah.
like, between both of them.
Yeah.
And it's like I did like the looks of like a lot, like the filmmaker is like a talented guy, I think. You're right though. There are just like little elements like that just like personally rub me the wrong way.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of agree with what you're saying. Like I think it's
So-
put together fine, but I don't like the actors. You did. I mean, it is what it is.
So I
That's
mean,
a part of it.
if we're like recommending or not recommending this movie to people, would you say in general people should go see this movie?
I'd say skip it. I think
You
there
don't like
probably are better examples of a type of a black comedy slasher horror movie.
Well, I definitely think comparing.
Go watch Black Christmas.
I definitely think comparing it
Not the remake.
to Scream is doing it a disservice. But I guess what I would say is go in with appropriate expectations. Don't go in expecting like a Scream level deconstruction of the genre or a satire
It's
on that
not-
level.
it's not Scream at all.
No, it's not at all. But if you would like to see like a home invasion horror movie, I think this is a well put together film. And it's one worth going to see, worth supporting, certainly over most of the horror films that come out to theaters. That's kind of my final take on it. I wasn't really excited about it, but I feel like I have to defend it because you disliked it so much.
I didn't hate it.
I think you kind of hated it.
I was annoyed by a lot of things in it.
You can hate it. That's that's cool.
I mean, with a final review, I would say skip it.
Okay. So I would say you skip it. I say see it. At least rent it. I guess I'd say that. But most people aren't going to see it. It's doing terrible in the box office. So whatever.
Hey, the critics like it. So
yeah, it's getting great reviews. So I don't know. I don't know about your next. You know, you guys tell us what you think of your next in the comments because we can't make up our minds about it clearly. So that's. I don't think we have too much more to say about that movie. We want to just talk a little bit at the end of the episode about other things we've been watching and other things we've been doing in the kind of unfortunately long hiatus between episodes. We haven't. We've seen a few horror movies, or I've seen a few at least. You and I watched one together.
Yep.
A while back. You want to tell the folks about?
King Kong, is that the one you're talking? Yeah, we watched the 1970s remake of King Kong. Which,
why did we watch that?
I don't know. I was just in the mood, I guess. But
Yeah.
I'd never seen it, and I really wanted to.
Yeah, likewise. Well, and I love King Kong, and I love giant monster movies, and I had not ever seen the 1976 remake with Jessica Lange. Was it
And
the first
actually,
one?
part of it sounded kind of interesting because they don't use. I mean, in like reviews, they talk about how it's just a guy in a suit the whole time.
Yeah.
Or it's that overly used giant hand that picks up the person.
Yep.
You know, it's just like props. They're using actual props. They're not using stop motion stuff, which sounds kind of interesting. I think it's a weird selling point because I don't think any other movie. There probably are, but I don't think I've seen any movie like that. It does not work. It's a horrible. It's not a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else to say about King
Yeah.
Kong.
Well,
they totally go the wrong way with it, I think.
Yeah.
It makes you realize what a great story the original black and white one is.
Well, for sure. And also what a good job Peter Jackson did in his underrated CGI King Kong. I don't really have anything to say about King Kong either. I thought it was fine. It's the 1976 King Kong, whatever. But I was thinking in retrospect, it is kind of interesting that there's been 3 remakes of King Kong, and each version has kind of showcased the kind of cutting edge of special effects at the time. So we really have all 3 approaches to giant monsters.
And Kong did look good.
Stop motion, the suit actor, which they used for 76, and then CGI with Peter Jackson's version.
Mm-hmm.
So if you watch all 3 King Kong movies, it's kind of an interesting study in approaching the same material with 3 different special effects. Mm-hmm. So I guess, if you want to, you can watch it for that reason, but you probably are better off with you're definitely better off with the original.
Yes.
Which I could probably watch every day, and not skip this great movie. So I don't know, have you seen anything else recently, or you haven't been watching as much?
Nothing really
Anything else you wanna
stands
mention?
out. The one that the other one that we watched was The Burning.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of...
We got a kick out of that one.
Burning is a great movie. I don't know. It came out like the year after Nightmare on Elm Street. Not Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it was in that early kind of post Friday the 13th Halloween.
It was like a year after. It's almost the exact same story.
Yeah, but supposedly they came up with the story for this one first. I mean, that's what they say.
It's like one of the very first Weinstein.
It's the first Weinstein Brothers film, yeah. So it's an 80s slasher. It takes place in a summer camp based on the Cropsey urban legend.
With George Costanza.
With Jason Alexander.
It's really funny because he's featured very prominently in it. He's got a big role.
It's very distracting, though. It's a fun movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why you don't hear about that movie more. I don't understand how it was overshadowed by Friday the 13th. I think Friday the 13th
Friday the 13th came out first.
Yeah, but I mean, it's probably a better movie, but it would be hard to say why one is more enjoyable than the other. I had a lot of fun watching The Burning. Watching The Burning reminded me of the first time I saw Friday the 13th. I mean, it's equally as fun.
Yeah, if you haven't seen The Burning, it's just been released.
And it's not that it's just a ripoff.
Yeah, no, it's just been released on Blu-ray. It'll definitely put you in that 1980s slasher movie mode. I mean, it's just a perfect example of that. It is released by our friends at Scream Factory, who we mentioned on the show before. Yep. Well, I'm hoping they'll send us some free screener copies if I say
free t-shirt.
If I mention them often enough. But they also released The Fog on Blu-ray, which I mentioned that I was anticipating, I'm sure, on a couple of previous episodes of that. So that's finally out on Blu-ray. Looks phenomenal. I love The Fog. We've talked about this movie before, and the special features on this are really phenomenal. There's a couple of commentary tracks, one brand new one with some of the actors from the films, Horror's Hallowed Grounds, where they visit the locations where the movies were filmed, and the real star attraction here is a 20-minute interview with Jamie Lee Curtis discussing not only her work in The Fog, but her entire kind of Scream Queen career, which she, famously very rarely discusses. She doesn't really do a lot of interviews about that. So it's quite a coup that they got her on there. So highest possible recommendation for The Fog on Blu-ray.
And it's just a great movie.
It's a great movie. Looks great on Blu-ray, and it's one of the few I would say probably worth an upgrade if you've already got an earlier version of it. I really enjoyed it. And then one other Scream Factory release I watched recently, a crazy movie that I really want you to watch.
This is one that sounds interesting.
It is fascinating. Life Force. This is a film by Tobe Hooper, adapted from a novel called Space Vampires, and it is indeed about space vampires.
And there's a writing credit on it too that I noticed. That's very interesting.
Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Alien, and you're really interested in his.
He's a great writer, director and writer of The Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah, it's got a primarily British cast. The main girl, Matilda May, kind of the lead space vampire, is basically
The
nude.
lead space.
She's
I
the-
want to see it now.
She's the lead space vampire. Well, you
vampire.
do want to see it because she is like nude throughout the whole film. It's got this weird, like overtly sexual kind of like edge to it. This is just a wild like ride of a movie, and I really never heard of it until Scream Factory
Yeah,
announced they
either.
were releasing it. Toby Hooper, director of Poltergeist and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, did this bizarre film. I think it was completely overlooked at the time, but of course, Scream Factory's given it a beautiful Blu-ray presentation. So I would, I mean, The Fog's a must, but I would highly recommend checking out Toby Hooper's Life Force if you haven't seen it, because it was a real.
I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, you definitely.
I was in
watch
before
it.
the nude person.
But yeah, so that's some of the other stuff we've been watching, and yeah, so I think that'll probably do it for this episode of Brain Says Strange Things. Don't forget
This one was kind of all over the place.
little all over the place, a little kind of thrown together, but we had some good stuff. So don't forget to like us on Facebook, where we post teasers of upcoming episodes and announce various horror related news and things like that. I cover a lot of the Scream Factory releases there, so be sure to do that. And we will again start posting these on a more regular basis. So we'll hopefully be back really soon with another brand new episode. Until then, we're out of here.
Farewell.
Bye bye.